Welcome back to the AI Revolution podcast and learning series. This is the AI in Healthcare edition, and today I am excited to speak with Natalie Arthurs, Senior Manager of the AI Hub at Durham College in Ontario, Canada. Natalie, welcome, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Carrie. It's great to be here.
It is. I'm excited to talk to you and to learn, really to introduce our listeners to everything they need to know to understand what is an AI hub, what does that innovation process look like, what kind of support do you offer, and what partners do you work with? And of course, because of this series, we're also going to focus in on healthcare. So case studies or trends or project learnings that are more specific to healthcare as we go along. Okay. So I'm going to start by just getting that sort of opening and framing for what you do and where you work. And I think the first question that I want to ask is, what is the problem or the gap that the AI Hub fills?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. So the AI Hub is an applied research center out of Durham College. So we work with companies across all different sectors of the economy and really across Canada to help with artificial intelligence adoption. So I'll back up and talk a little bit about what do we mean when we say applied research. So particularly in fields like healthcare, there's, you think about all of the research continuum. So there's very basic or theoretical research and new discovery, all the way down to, very applied uses in the field where you're bumping into AI in your everyday office, your everyday, business, or at home, you're going through it. So in the applied research, we like to think of it as we're very downstream on that research continuum. So we are not necessarily doing like in lab type of research. We're doing applied research, helping companies take the technology, the research findings, and the talent that is grown on university and college campuses and putting them directly into the hands of companies and business owners to unlock productivity, efficiency, better engagement, and get those sort of solutions into the hands of real companies and real people. So we think of it as practical solutions to real world problems. And applied research centers operate on a co-creation model. So, you're not necessarily just saying, okay, go build this AI solution for me. We're working really closely with our clients to understand what they're trying to achieve with AI and building that solution together and then handing it over to them to run with, whether that's to take a new product to market or to bring something into their existing business that helps them to do it better, faster, or in a more engaging way. At the end of the day, whatever we build together belongs to them. As I said, the AI Hub doesn't necessarily work just on healthcare, but we happen to work a lot with healthcare because it is a sector that is very rich for AI adoption. And it's also complicated because of the nature of data and problems that you're trying to solve when you think about the healthcare context. So that's what the purpose of applied research is. And then when we look at what does that mean for us at the AI Hub? We have a focus on artificial intelligence. So we work with companies to help understand and make use of that particular technology. Obviously, that's very broad, and it's changing every day what people actually mean by AI and what it can do for their company. And so I like to think of us as there to help people navigate this moment and to put it to productive use for their companies.
Amazing. Okay, so that was an excellent introduction. There are a few pieces that I'm going to pick up on. Okay,
sure.
So, I mean, in short, if I can sort of summarize, we're looking at partnering with companies, partnering with real companies on real world problems and solutioning for them. So there is that practical component to the research and innovation that you're doing. They are. You're really helping with AI adoption. So the AI Hub is focused on AI, which is, of course, what so many businesses are thinking about today, looking at, as you said, at varying degrees. So it may be very new to them, or it may be something that's already well integrated into their business. You did mention your work with healthcare and why. I'm going to pick up on that in a minute, but I'm just going to ask very generally, Who are the companies you work with, as in how do they find you? How do they get
Sure.
sort of approved to partner with you? Tell us about that piece.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we, because we're focused on AI, we have been really deliberate about how we approach our services and what that means for the companies that we partner with. So the AI Hub has been around since 2017, believe it or not. And so when we got started, we worked mostly with very research and development intensive companies, mostly on commercializing new AI solutions. Since then, our mandate has broadened quite a bit. And that is really in response to how ubiquitous AI has become and how much of both a challenge and an opportunity it's come for companies. We've really challenged ourselves to try to meet that moment and be accessible for different companies based on their literacy. We've sort of created a couple of pathways to partnership based on the level of AI literacy or the AI readiness that the company has. So, we like to think of them as sort of like AI explorers or those that are AI curious. We have some that are right in the mix of just, they've got their feet wet, they've got great data, but now they need help to build. We also work with AI experts who, in some cases, know just as much as we do about AI. They really have an intense R&D agenda, and they look at us as sort of that subject matter expertise and an extension of their development team. So we've got, right across the spectrum, those are our clients. The way they want to partner with us and what's meaningful for them looks different. So we have sort of three main service offerings that we provide. And for most companies, we're doing some combination of these, and it's very, very tailored to their specific objectives around AI adoption or commercialization. And those three services are training, advisory services, and then development. So this is, be your traditional R&D, where we're actually, we've designed a solution, and now we're working alongside the company to develop it and implement it. For some companies, that looks like doing all three. For some, they're very targeted. And it really depends on when we, are engaging a company that's saying, okay, how can we help you? There's a couple of things that we look at. And first, it's really rooted in their own business objectives. So, for some companies, they might not have ever imagined that they were going to touch artificial intelligence. That's no longer seen as optional for most leading companies now, right? And so increasingly, especially over the last year, I would say, we've had to shift the way that we think or expand our services to be able to have those conversations in meaningful ways with those companies. And so we usually start with some combination of training, data readiness, and use case identification. So a combination of training and advisory services. So with training, we're trying to build that foundational knowledge about what AI is and is not. A safe place where people can experiment without feeling like they're, exposing themselves or their companies to major risks, and just really a curiosity-driven approach. And some really applied use cases based on the sector or their company. I find that training's very rich when we're able to take a sectoral or company-specific approach, because we can pick the right use cases and, pick some of the problems out of the headlines and go deep on those, but it can be general as well. So that's on the training side. We do some open enrollment training programs. And we also we'll put together like custom training for companies, or executive teams, so we've got both of those things. Believe it or not, a lot of the demand for training is actually more on the non-technical side around governance, change management, understanding how do you pick whether a use case is appropriate for the problem. How do they understand the value in their data? How do they approach a data integration exercise? A lot of the training has ended up in that space because non-technical decision makers need to have that foundational understanding in order to even evaluate the technical proposals that are hitting their desk. So we spent actually a lot of time in that space on the training side. One example of a program, if your users are interested in looking into it, would be our AI Guide program. So this is a program that we run in partnership with the Council for Canadian Innovators every year. And it is focused on getting an understanding of governance, use case identification, data, all of those pieces I just talked about. It's an open enrollment training program. And then we also offer sector-specific like cohorts of it. So we've got one coming up for oil and gas, for example. So that is one sort of like consistent training framework that we've developed under the training arm.
Interesting.
That gets into some of the regulatory pieces that, again, those non-technical decision makers are wrestling with. On the advisory side, this is a very like meet the company where they are kind of exercise, but we do follow a framework to help take something from concept through to a fully sort of feasible solution. So there's a series of steps that we go through. This is where our researchers will get involved. So we will meet with a company, kind of help them scope their problem based on a use case or a business problem or a set of KPIs. We kind of work through that discovery process with them to understand what does successful AI adoption look like for you and why. And then we build an advisory project around it following our framework. We bring in an AI expert from our bench of researchers, and they sort of manage the project. A really interesting thing about the way we approach these advisories is we also bring students and new grads onto those research teams. So they're getting the exposure to some of the, they've learned all this stuff in the classroom, but maybe with a perfectly clean data set versus getting out to a real company where it's a lot messier and more complicated, right? So it's actually a really good win-win situation. We are teaching the up-and-coming talent that really understands the AI piece of it. What does it look like when you're actually applying this in a real, complicated, messy environment? So we find that both parties end up learning quite a bit. And from our advisory, that's how we end up getting into and entering into a lot of our longer term research and development projects where we're actually then developing the solution, helping them to understand how to integrate it meaningfully into their workforce, that type of thing. So that's kind of the two entry points are usually training or advisory. And then from there, we do tons and tons of development work. And I know probably as we go on, we'll get into some examples of what does that whole life cycle look like and what are some of the results that come out of it. But that's typically how we start with a company or an individual.
Awesome. That was a really good description. Super exciting. So, I mean, training, advisory, and development, usually training and advisory as those entry points. I was going to ask you about your kind of team. So you started to answer that in a very cool way. Let's stay on that topic for a moment and tell us about, I gave the most basic introduction to your name and title. Tell us about your role as the senior manager of the AI Hub.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I joined the AI Hub about 2.5 years ago as the senior manager. When I joined, the organization had just become what's called a Technology Access Center. So we received a designation from the federal government, sort of giving us the stamp to say, yeah, you are an applied research center that's credibly providing artificial intelligence services. And with that came the senior manager role. And so I stepped in the role really to help make that bridge from the more intensive applied research and development now into how do we help companies across the economy make sense of AI. Really interesting time to join because it was right around the time of the whole chat GPT explosion and really what AI meant for real people in their homes and carrying out their day started to change right at the time that I joined. I think it's also probably important for me to disclose to your users at this point that I myself am not actually like an AI developer. I'm not a computer scientist. I have a business background and a public policy background. And I've spent most of my career on trying to come up with programs to help businesses be more competitive by leveraging technology and talent. So the college felt like the perfect place for me. And I also have 2 very young children. And I looked at this AI thing and I either had to figure it out and go all in, or I wasn't going to recognize the world that I was raising my kids in. So that was a big personal motivator for me, was to go and learn from these experts and help them put a business offering around the incredible expertise that they had. And it's a really nice mix of talent that we have. I think for the user, for anyone that's listening to the whole series, I think you're going to hear from my colleague Saba later on. And she is an AI developer and an expert in responsible and ethical AI. So I've learned a ton from her. And it's been my privilege really to sort of like oversee that. Now, how do we bring clients in and make this a meaningful experience for them? And we have had a lot of traction. Obviously, our topic is pretty hot right now. And so, we're just trying to be as responsive and agile and open to companies as we possibly can be.
Very, very cool. So you have a team of, so you just described your role a little bit more detail. You have a team of researchers that any company working with you would have access to. You bring in recent graduates as well as current students, and they get a little bit of that.
Yeah. So we have a couple of core staff, myself. We have our research lead, Saba, who sort of oversees all of our technical resources. The AI Hub is one of a couple of applied research centers at Durham College. So there's an operations team behind that. The research expertise comes from, I like to think of them as our research bench, really incredible. We have a bit of a combination we have faculty advisors. They typically give us more of the sort of like advice, oversee experiential learning pieces, do some of the training. They typically are more working with us than working with companies, but not exclusively. A couple of the faculty deliver some of the training programs that I described. Then we have we call them principal investigators, which is kind of a technical term, but they are really the like subject matter experts. They're professional researchers. In our case, most of them also work in industry for companies that are building AI solutions. So they're sort of got a mixed background across all the major AI domains, machine learning, operations. We've got some, engineering background, computer science background. Most of them have come through Durham College's postgrad certificate program in artificial design at some point. We also now have an honors Bachelor of Intelligence, an honors Bachelor of Artificial Intelligence program at Durham. And so we're bringing some students through that. So we've got sort of a combination of professional researchers, faculty, new grads, and students. And we match them based on expertise, particularly with that project lead and principal investigator. And then we round out the teams with the students and new grads so that they get that learning and the on-the-job learning, but also bring really fresh and creative solutions to industry.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So, Durham is doing a lot for programming. Sounds pretty far ahead of what some of the competitors may have, with already having a bachelor's of artificial intelligence. It sounds like that artificial design program is really beneficial. Before we jump into, one more piece that I want to add in before we jump into what does the life cycle look like? What are some of those case studies and trends? And that is, innovation sounds exciting. Everything that you just described sounds like your client companies would have access to amazing resources, but it also costs money. So how does that funding piece work when you work within the AI Hub ecosystem? Yeah,
that's a good question. It does cost money. Good quality work does come at a cost. We try to keep the pathways pretty open for our clients. So everything that we offer is available as a fee for service, and we try to set our pricing model that it is accessible and fair. And it's really about covering the costs of running the center. And we believe very strongly that all of the student resources should be paid and paid well. So we do offer everything on fee for service, and then we will work with clients to help them access funding where it makes sense. That is a business decision. I always say to clients that absolutely, totally makes sense to pursue non-dilutive funding from the government. That is right. The trade-off with funding can be time, because it's public funds. And so there's a review process that goes into it, and we don't control that review process. The client doesn't review that control process. So if they're truly engaging in R&D and, they have some time, the non-dilutive funding route can be a really good way to go. But it does take extra time. And you're a little bit more limited to what's considered an eligible cost and not, right? And so we end up stitching projects together. Again, not a problem. Happy to do it. But it's just important for clients to know coming in on the funding side. There are some programs as a college that we have access to as a lead, where the money would come to us to support the partnership with the business. We work very closely with IRAP. We get a contribution from IRAP every year that we set up programs where, we can support clients directly as long as they're IRAP clients. This year, we will do probably about 50 to 60 projects through IRAP, and probably $500,000 worth of projects. So that's definitely an avenue. We always encourage our clients to partner with IRAP where they can. And then we'll obviously support our clients on a one-to-one basis where they, as the company, are tapping into some kind of business support program. We can come in as an academic partner. So it's part of it. It's not the only part of it. I think, we want to be as flexible as possible. And I would always encourage companies to take advantage of whatever funding they can, especially if you're trying to get something new off the ground. And we'll see what happens over the next year. I mean, it's a big priority, I think, for a lot of, for governments to help get this technology into the hands of companies. Canada is really lagging with tech adoption, particularly for small and medium businesses. So we, could see some new funding opportunities in response to that. This is not I don't have any inside track here. This is just my, musings, but I think you'll see a lot of activity in this space.
Okay. Very, very exciting. Very helpful. I mean, in terms of a bit of a summary there. So really, I'll say any company, and you can correct me, but any company could approach you on a fee for service basis. It's a fair fee with a lot of expertise that they're getting. But of course, there are also these funding opportunities out there that could be government programs or IRAP, as an example, type funding, where either they may be able to apply for it, or you as the AI Hub at Durham College may be able to take the lead. But of course, considering the fact that may have timeline, may and will have timeline implications, possibly some other limitations on what is or isn't included. Is that kind of a fair?
Yeah, that's a good summary. I would say, like any company where this is a live question, it's always best to have a conversation and look at, the individual needs. There's lots of resources available to do sort of like more broad kind of research on what grants you may or may not be eligible for. It's a very patchwork quilts environment in Canada and in Ontario, but some of those supports are there, and we're happy to support where we can, but also happy to work with clients more on fee for service. And we do both sometimes, right? Like someone's waiting for a decision on a grant, so we'll do the other. So we're very flexible and solution oriented. So we'll try to work with the company to really understand their needs and where does the whole picture look like, and where do we fit in to helping with the AI adoption. Of course, funding is one piece of it.
Okay, amazing. So that's a lot of background we've offered on what the AI Hub is, what you do, you in your role, but also what your team does. A little bit around what it would cost or what those timelines could look like or consider. You mentioned, so you work with all kinds of companies across different sectors, but we did talk about healthcare as a focus, and an interesting focus because there is so much innovation happening in that space, and they are so data rich in general. Yeah. As we focus in on some, and again, you can be as specific or broad as you want. So if that, I'm sure in some cases there's privacy or NDAs where we don't want to talk specifically about companies or projects. So those, we could generalize those a little bit. But can you share a healthcare based AI project that really changed how you think about what's possible?
Sure. I will speak to one example where we've had a more of an ongoing partnership, and we have actually published a case study. So this might be helpful. Awesome. If you're listening along. You can check out our website and you can read a little bit more about the case study that I'm going to speak to. I believe our partner Natalia may also be participating in this series. This project, for a couple of reasons, changed the way that I thought about applied research and AI adoption. And first was how I found myself talking to Natalia in the first place. And that was, I mentioned that we're a technology access center. Natalia had a cosmetics company, and she had been working with another applied research center focused on natural products, and had this idea for an AI sort of offshoot of her company. And they referred her to us and said, hey, if you're just thinking about this and want to see what's possible, you should check out the AI Hub. And so she came. She's already sort of used to working with IRAP and in the applied research space. And so we were able to set up a project pretty quickly. And what Natalia wanted to do was understand the feasibility of creating an AI-driven solution for like in a clinician, or like think about, you go in for a facial. How could I think it really started with product recommendation, but then as the research went on, and we looked at putting in a computer vision based kind of solution, she came to the realization that it could actually be a diagnostic tool that would help a clinician or a cosmetologist spot signs of things like early detection of cancer or other skin abnormalities that actually required medical care, and have those more on like a direct referral basis to dermatology or a clinical setting. So that, project started with us, or started with us working together. We're continuing to work together on making this more effective and more, lightweight, if I can put it that way, scalable, right? So if you're going to have this available inside, esthetician offices all over the country, the solution itself has to be fairly lightweight and inexpensive. So, helping to optimize the model, that type of thing. So yeah, we've been working with her for quite a while now. And it really shifted. Like, she's still in the cosmetics business, but kind of got this whole second piece now. Again, if you want to read more about sort of how we approach the work and what some of the outcomes are, like there is a case study published on our site. And she's continuing on with the R&D and trying and bringing this solution to reality. We also do I also love mentioning Natalia's example, because we do a competition amongst all of our clients every year for the most impactful AI solution. And Natalia was our winner for 2024. For 2025. Oh my goodness, we're almost in 26. Yes. So she was our last year's winner, 2025 winner. And yeah, it's a great example there. Computer vision and skincare is a big area for sure. There are also, tons of opportunities that are, I really like the healthcare examples because there's a ton of opportunities right in sort of patient care, or that like you think now more of the like large language model based, sort of like chat based. There's a ton of interventions that can be very timely. So we've worked on a number of use cases actually surrounding, like mental health, addiction support, and just having some of those like more coaching type of models. We've worked on a number of use cases around that. And then there's some emerging use cases around pharmacy that we're excited to explore further. Healthcare is really, quite data rich, quite sensitive. People care a lot about it. The accuracy is critical. So it's exciting because there's a lot to unpack in any healthcare example. And so, Natalia is a good example. We did go through lots of work. You have to make sure you're getting it right? And so that's where that kind of approach that's grounded in research and grounded in a framework about ethical AI solution design, both of which we feel we bring to the table, can be a really important starting point. And that was true in Natalia's case, and it's true in a lot of the projects that we're, working on now with those differing use cases that I talked about.
Yeah, amazing. So how common is it? Natalia came to you with a sort of a problem that that her business was facing that you could help solve, which was really an assessment, a diagnostic for, probably specifically for facials, for aesthetics. And it turned into, kind of a completely different solution, even if the core was the same. Like how common is that to happen in a project with the AI Hub or in your experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, probably quite a bit of the time. It depends a little bit on how, what the starting point is, right? So for, but anytime you're starting with so for Natalia, we started with what you would think of as a feasibility study. And we do this for many, many projects. In other high-risk sectors, by the way, another one of my favorite examples that's published on our site is in the nuclear energy sector. Very different than health, but from an AI perspective, you've got a lot of compliance. You've got people's lives in your hands, so similar. So in these really sensitive sectors, starting with a feasibility study is a great approach. And that's, I talked about advisory services kind of thing being an entry point. That feasibility study is key. And so if you go approach a feasibility study with a clear problem and an open mind, often the results are surprising. Maybe have different applications than you thought, or an expanded. Natalie's is really an expansion, right? It solved the original problem, but then opened up these other possibilities. And I would say that, we find that quite a bit of the time. The other thing that we'll find is like a shift in scope. So sometimes these advisories or feasibility studies are a reality check. What a lot of people don't realize about AI is that it costs money per transaction. So every time you go and make a call on a chat GPT or a Copilot, or, anytime you're interacting with an AI, there is a real transactional cost that goes into that. And there's a lot of energy that goes into that. And so if you're putting a solution into the market where you're on the hook for all of those things, it's not that you shouldn't do it, but part of why we start with this research is to understand that and put it out in real terms. And so we have had projects shift in scope because they were either not feasible, or they opened up new potential, or, people realize, okay, that's not going to be scalable if it's going to cost that. So we have to go back and redesign the solution to be lighter weight or lower touch, or really just use AI where it's really needed. So yeah, the feasibility study, or, that feasibility approach, or the framework that we follow that to sort of take it from concept to a fully implementable solution, is intended to, in and of itself, be an educational experience where you learn that sort of reality of what that AI adoption will look like. And often that yields more conversations around, okay, well, if that's not going to work, let's make it work. Or, hey, there's a brand new opportunity here. But starting in a very grounded way is very, it's wise, right? You get all of that kind of mystery out. And it helps keep it manageable, right? It's like any kind of big change management exercise. You want to take it off in bites that you can chew. And so starting with a plan is a great way to do it. And then we move pretty quickly into proof of concept, piloting. So it's a way to start small, but take really meaningful steps. And of course, sometimes the results are surprising.
Yeah. It's super interesting because I love how Natalia's really just turned into an expanded solution, and you're taking people through this process that has safeguards built in, right? Has a little bit of risk mitigation built in, and just helps you really understand where you're going, how this idea can turn into something feasible, but maybe something bigger, different, greater than you thought it was going to be. Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. So if you could speak from this perspective, what patterns are emerging across successful healthcare AI initiatives? And as you brought up earlier, healthcare may have parallels across other sectors, right? So if we look at just some of those key characteristics around it, is high risk. Some of those. So it may not just be healthcare, but what are some key emerging patterns that you're seeing across successful AI initiatives?
Yeah. So the first thing that I'm going to observe is not new. It's not revolutionary. It's very core to what AI is. And that is that the data that's driving these solutions is absolutely critical. I'm sure your listeners have heard this phrase by now already, but it's, garbage into these and you're going to get garbage out. When you hear about bias in AI, that really comes down to the data that's fed in. So the data piece is absolutely critical. It's the first thing that we look at with every engagement that we do is like, where is your data? How is it structured? AI is getting better at ingesting all different kinds of data, and that opens up new opportunities and it opens up new risks. Because if you're dealing in a world where the data has to be highly cleansed and structured, it's more likely that you're going to catch those things like personal identifiers or all those pieces that raise the risk profile. Now that a lot of AI can ingest really quite unstructured information, I think there's higher risk that some of those things get missed. again, we can help with that, but we're not working with everybody. But that data piece is an underpinning and a real understanding of what is your data, where is it proprietary, does that matter? All that data foundations is absolutely critical. That's true across any solution that is going to be meaningfully sort of adopted. And then what happens to the data on the outputs is also really important. So that's just a foundational piece. It's not new to AI, but it's increasingly important. And it's always something that we really try to hit home with our partners.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I know you have more. Would you? So how do you handle a partner who comes to you where their data is not in a condition that you can work with?
So we can help them to create, know what some of the best practices are. So a really an example where we wouldn't want to necessarily work with the data on day one is it's not a data set that's not anonymized at source, right? So you want to be you don't want to be feeding in personal or client or patient data unknowingly, and really not at all. It should be anonymized. And so if we have a use case where we know that it may require some of those personal identifiers to be successful, we want to look at the data source and understand, is it anonymized, and is it anonymous at the source of collection or not? And if not, then how do we help you mitigate and get that into a data set that can be used? That's one for sure. Others, again, is more on the unstructured piece that we can help with. Again, the AI is getting better at that. And another piece where companies struggle with data is not knowing how to pull it all together. So, if you're a larger enterprise, for example, you might have all of these different legacy systems, and where does all the data sit from a governance perspective? Who owns it? How do you get it out? So we can help to navigate that a little bit as well. So those are some of the key, I would say when someone comes to us and says, those are some of the keys. I guess the other, and this is more for companies that are looking to maybe commercialize or build something brand new, is the availability of data and the availability to be used for commercial purposes. So just to go back to the example of the computer vision solution for Natalia's story that we were talking about, data is actually a bit of a challenge for some of those because there are not a lot of expansive data sets. They're growing. There's computer vision models now that are getting better at making that available, but it can actually be a big challenge. And from a healthcare perspective, a lot of the data sets that are available may not be available for this purpose, right? May not be available for commercial, that type of thing. So the availability piece, depending on, again, it just really depends on the solution, but those are some of the kind of issues that they might come across from a readiness perspective, depending on what the use case is. I guess the other piece that we are always looking for is a problem to use case to data match. So, you probably heard the phrase, you don't want to bring a machete and try to use it as a butter knife, right? So we try to really understand what's the problem you're trying to solve. What's the best way to use AI in that solution? And then is the data there to support that use of AI? And usually if those things are not in alignment, one of those can be adjusted, right? So maybe if you do have the data, you just change the AI approach, or you know what I mean? Or what problem statement. So we do look for a match across those. And that's actually a really important piece, is having that alignment between the problem you're trying to solve, the AI solution you're trying to bring to the solution to solve it, and then the data to support the solution. So that is another area where it can, where you can say, okay, we need to do some more work here. And again, we'll help and guide, but if those things are not in alignment, then it's only a matter of time before that becomes an issue.
Description. I took you on a slight tangent from the question of what patterns are emerging. You said data was that first piece, which is obviously incredibly important. What else were you thinking of that you're seeing as an emerging pattern?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk right now about agentic AI. And so this is sort of like, the next iteration of some of the LLM chat-based types that people are getting quite used to now is now the idea of assigning these agents to perform tasks. So that is really interesting from a governance perspective. I still haven't necessarily seen like a real great adoption in healthcare space, but it's coming. And understanding that from a governance perspective and really looking carefully at the rules as this agentic AI, the capabilities are evolving quite quickly. And so, always thinking about what is that relationship going to be between the human decision maker or the human that's involved in this chain of, tasks and outputs and the technology, and really navigating that relationship properly is important. It's important for all agentic AI type, problem statements. But again, with the healthcare lens, it's quite key. And from a technology perspective, you could enable these agents to do quite a bit. And so knowing where that line is and what the role of the human needs to be is key. And so in a healthcare perspective, explainability is key, right? So you need to be able to explain how you got to any outcome. And I just think that a lot of the common sort of challenges and trends and opportunities that are emerging with AI will be there for healthcare. It's then just applying that lens of now, what does it mean in this context, where there's quite a bit of regulation and quite a bit of risk. And so there's always just that. The technology is still the same technology. The question's the same question, but now it needs a healthcare lens of, you may want more human involvement for a longer period of time when you're making decisions related to health outcomes. So that's one to watch. I think will be really interesting, and I'm excited to have. I'm sure that we'll see use cases on this come our way in the next months, and I'm excited to dive into what that's going to look like.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're recording late 2025. So very interesting to see how quickly the use cases evolve, how well the technology fits the actual needs, the actual problems that come in front of you. This is not intended to be a leading question, but what healthcare AI trends feel real and durable, and which ones are overhyped?
That's a good question. I think for me, this is more of like a personal philosophy now. I think for me, the healthcare solutions that really impact the patient experience and the patient outcomes were the ones that will persist. They may also take the longest and have the most change management, but anything that enables more engaging visit to your doctor. Like, here's a really basic example, really basic example. Recently I went into my family doctor with my young daughter, and she said, I'm going to use AI to transcribe. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, of course I'm a doctor, right? So I said, yeah, that's great. The conversation we had was totally different than the previous appointments because she was listening now. She wasn't taking notes. She was listening now.
Wow.
This is a really simple use case, right? The meeting transcription is not all that novel, but it totally changed our experience. What my very young daughter has come now to understand, she's going to have a conversation now. And so those use cases are where I want to spend the time. What's going to improve the patient experience? We've come a long way in getting all of these different points of patient care to talk to each other in Ontario for sure. And now that opens up a ton of opportunity for AI, but I think the ones that really influence the patient-doctor relationship are really meaningful to me. Some that I worry about a little bit are those that kind of maybe seek to replace that. And so, there's you'll hear more about online-based or chat-based therapies or things like that. And I think that can be part of the solution, but it shouldn't replace that, shouldn't replace having a qualified caregiver if I can put it that way, or, doctor opinion. So I think that those are both questions of what does these mean for our relationships? And I think that's, a piece that I think we'll need some attention. We'll need some careful thought, right? Like and this comes back to what do you sort of outsource to the technology to do? And some of the things that I see or hear around, taking some of the load of therapy types solutions off work.
Yeah.
This is personally not for me. So yeah, that's another one to watch, and
maybe
just
not
good guardrail.
Maybe not yet.
Yeah. And like,
maybe not yet.
If there's a lot of training, and certification. You just take the therapy example further, where like, they would be trained on all of these, indicators that interventions needed immediately. Right. And the technology is just not there yet. And I think there should always be a human involved in that type of interaction. And so just keeping those lines straight is going to be something that healthcare, those questions will be asked for the next number of years, I think, on just like, where are those lines, right? And I think the technology will probably move faster than we're able to make some of those decisions consciously. So that's something that we'll really have to stay on top of as a sort of, the champions of AI will really have to stay on top of that it gets put to use, properly and safely. Yes.
Yeah. So many really important points that you brought up there. And I really do appreciate the kind of the personal anecdote about, keeping things human, right? Making sure that we're not losing that piece and how much benefit we can have. I know that we don't have a lot of time left, so I have two, there's so much more we could cover, but I have two more questions in this conversation for today.
Sure.
The first is, thinking about the fact that the AI Hub, your AI Hub, has existed since, I think you said 2017. Is that right? Yeah. And then you've been there the last couple of years. So this question is about how generative AI is changing the conversation compared to earlier waves of AI or machine learning, which the AI Hub has experienced all of it. And you came in really with that big wave of generative AI being so accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So how has generative AI changed the conversation?
I think it's huge. I think for me, like the generative AI wave AI has actually been, we've been around since 2017. AI has been around really since the 50s. It's had its ebbs and flows. It's winters, as people would call it, but it's been around for a long time. The concept is not all that new. The generative AI brought it to everybody's like a day-to-day experience. That was it's a big shift, right? So for us, our client base has shifted. We continue to work with those R&D intensive companies, AI first companies that are, we continue to do that. That's still a big part of our business. There's been a lot more demand from, even just retail businesses or manufacturers of how do I take advantage of this? And it might start from the potential that they've seen unlocked with like using chat or something like that. But it's more that the solution might not end up even being a generative AI, but it's become, so I guess the word that I'm looking for is maybe ubiquitous. Like it's sort of everywhere in your face. It's pretty much inevitable now. And so I think now we're seeing that change it feels inevitable for most businesses. Whereas it might maybe felt optional or far off, a few years ago, where it was like, oh yeah, like that'll be nice. I don't necessarily think that a lot of people saw it coming this fast. I didn't. And so I think that sort of inevitability is a big change that companies are realizing that they're going to have to navigate it or sort of be left behind. And so you're seeing it, and now you're starting to see it hit in some of the sectors that are traditionally a little bit slower to adopt, and for good reason, right? So like manufacturing is going to see a big uptake in this, particularly with some of the agentic AI pieces. I think it's just, it's just so much more part of the conversation now that companies of different capacities and different they're just jumping in because they feel they have to. And so we're trying to be here to kind of make that, help bridge that gap. And for us, it has meant widening our services and approach to be accessible to more companies.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, right? We talked a lot about what the Innovation Hub is and does, some of the frameworks and processes that you follow, some of the clients that you've worked with, the team behind it. If some trends, some things that we might, need to worry about looking forward. If we were to record again in 3 years, 5 years, it's really hard to tell the time frames right now. It's going so fast. But let's say 3 to 5 years from now, what would you hope that we'd be celebrating in that conversation?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope that we will, I'm not going to talk to the specific trends because honestly, like the capabilities are changing every 6 months, but I think the celebrations are more maybe cultural. I would hope that our Canadian adoption, we're celebrating that we have just, adopted this at unprecedented rates, that we were able to break down barriers to adoption for small, medium companies, and they were able to realize its full potential. I hope also that we're celebrating having a responsive regulatory environment, if I can put it that way. And that maybe that is a 3 to 5 year horizon, right? This stuff requires really careful implementation at an individual level, at a company level, and at a societal level. And so a regulatory framework has to be balanced, right? We cannot stand in the way of innovation and adoption. In fact, should encourage it, but there are some guardrails that should be established. And so I hope we're celebrating that we got that right and that companies feel that they can thrive in a regulatory environment that's been laid out. There's a lot of work to do to get there. The approach that we're taking today is to try to future-proof a little bit, to think about what that could look like and meet the safety standards as we understand them and help companies understand some of the risks. But yeah, I think if we were celebrating that Canada was able to, we're not on the right trend right now. So if we were able to, point to 2026 as the year that turned around and we got on a meaningful AI adoption journey, that'd be a huge win, as would a productive regulatory environment.
Amazing. Very, very well put. Thank you for the insightful conversation today and for all of your time.
Yeah, thank you.
And for everyone listening. Yeah, thank you. And for everyone else listening, it's been another episode of the AI Revolution podcast and learning series with our special focus on AI in healthcare and our special guest today, Natalie Arthurs from the AI Hub. I've been your host again today, Carrie Purcell, and stay tuned for more great interviews and panels to come.